there will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
Bitcoin is punk rock. Deal with it.
You split, we bankrupt you.
Do you use Lightning wallets to pay for things or not?
No.
Bitcoin Cash would be seen as more of a threat to the United States hegemony than Bitcoin.
Miles, Tom, what's your favorite kind of money?
Bitcoin Cash.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast, following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency. This is episode number 52, CoinFlex Capitulation and Cash Tokens, featuring Max Hastings. Today is Saturday, the 2nd of July, 2022. I'm your host, Jeremy. Jet is producing the show as always. And of course, we are trying to money grub with the new Twitch ads and subs features we've got here. So actually seems like a pretty good crowd tonight. A lot of people tuning. Maybe there's a good time zone. I don't know. But anyway, straight into the show. One of the biggest weeks in Bitcoin Cash history. Guest Max, you've been on the show before. You were on episode number 11, one of the earliest episodes, obviously, and so long time listener to the show, long time community member. For people who didn't check in with you on that episode, which had absolutely awful audio for anybody who tries to listen to it, how do you get into Bitcoin, and what are you doing in the Bitcoin Cash community?
Yeah, thanks for the intro. Happy to be back. I guess a quick rundown is I've always kind of followed Bitcoin and cryptocurrency since I think I found it on a gaming forum back in 2011. I had just bought a new gaming computer. Someone said I can mine this coin and make money. So I mined Bitcoin for I think 6 hours with my graphics card. It made 25 cents or 50 cents. I said, this is dumb. Uninstalled everything. Didn't know what Bitcoin was for the next, 2-3 years. And then I think I have to recall, maybe it was early 2017 or sometime in 2016, I saw Ethereum and that it was new and this was crypto still and smart contracts, and looked really exciting. I think it was first year of college or something. And so I kind of followed Ethereum a bit. I didn't invest anything, even though Ethereum was trading at $10 a coin. But I like the idea of the smart contracts. And then I kind of got part of crypto a lot more during the 2017 run up, the ICO boom and everything. And since then, I've been way more active since that the 2017 ICO boom. And then Bitcoin Cash, I found out. I didn't try to find it. I was trying to find a meetup in Chicago, and there was no meetups crypto related or even Bitcoin related. The only thing there was there was a Bitcoin Cash meetup in Chicago, and it was hosted by I forgot his last name, but the Kurt guy from I think he switched to Bitcoin SV. He's pretty
Walker.
Kurt Walker or whatever. I don't know the last name, but he was a really cool guy, and it was a good meetup. And this was before the split. This was late 2018, and he showed me Bitcoin Cash, and I was like, oh, this is it was instant transactions, low fees and everything. I was like, this is really cool. And then from there, I've been always following the Bitcoin Cash project since then.
Yeah, nice. And would you say that then that is your main focus, or are you also as deeply involved in the community with Ethereum or with any other coins?
I never really got too involved with Ethereum. I mean, I feel like it became harder to get involved with Ethereum when, fees went up higher. I think to deploy an Ethereum smart contract on the layer, on their mainnet during the peak was $1,000. It was just ridiculous. So it's just kind of the entry to Ethereum was just too high. So in terms of trying to build things, it wasn't doable. But I do kind of keep track of what's going on with the DeFi in general. I thought the Binance Smart Chain was a cool idea because they made Ethereum related DeFi stuff more accessible, even though it was more centralized and everything. But hey, it allowed people to experiment with not spending a whole lot of money. And then also Bitcoin Cash kind of got involved with SmartBCH. I guess we're going to talk about today, where we also have our own EVM smart chain as well. So
Yeah, very cool. So definitely, yeah, one of the most rocky weeks in Bitcoin Cash history that we've got to cover. But for the listeners, I'm definitely going to try and do my best to just walk through it step by step. So for people who are way down the rabbit hole, things might just, move along slowly. But for the benefit of the listeners that have not been following this saga in great drama and detail, we'll try and give you every kind of angle of it as it is. And one other quick note that I wanted to point out is that the conference, which was going to be in StMaarten at the end of the year, that I said at the end of last show, peerxpeer.com, go check out the website. It seems like there's been some logistical issues or some changes of plans there, so the website is down, and we'll have to follow up with that on you later. Jay Diaz calling out Max for not looking like his Telegram avatar. So yeah, get your act together.
hey, actually, there is a SpongeBob related meme in my room. So I mean, it's kind of similar, right?
SpongeBob, an all-time classic of the meme game. All right, first things first, the price this week, collapsing bear market. Oh, I forgot to update the title again. Anyway, the price is down. Basically, it's $105.81 per Bitcoin Cash. One BTC buys 183.8 BCH, and given all of the drama and all the problems and all the issues, I mean, the fact is, basically, it feels like it should be worse. Like, we're only down $10 from the last episode last week, before with really this CoinFlex stuff just starting. So I think we have been under $100 this week. Jet did win the bet. So are we doing another bet, or what's going on with that?
I think we both are
round 3.
I think we both agree this is the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, this is your take now. It's the bottom.
Yeah, I think at least for the next month. Like I was saying this in I think the price chat. Like I really can't see us going below $75 unless Tether also collapses. And if it does, then no man's land, $50 or lower, like the all-time low. But even if that's the case, like I'll be accumulating the highest percentages that I ever have. So I'm here for it either way. Either this is the bottom and Max and I are doing pretty well at timing the market, or it's not the bottom and we're both getting another opportunity to really increase our positions.
Yeah, because I sort of feel like we're getting closer to a sort of capitulation. I did title this episode CoinFlex Capitulation, but I don't want that to be indicative of the whole market. I do think BCH is going to hit a floor, because we must be at this point so close to just the actual genuine floor. No speculators, literally just the diamond hands and people who actually need to trade in BCH. There cannot be many people hoping for the moon willy-nilly left, right? So at this point, I think BCH is eventually, it's just got to hit rock bottom, and then I'm still expecting Bitcoin to fall, Ethereum, other coins are still going to keep washing out for a while, I think. But that's just my impression. So I've been continuously predicting that BCH would be going lower, and it has been. And I'm going to stick with that. But I do see some signs that we are getting more towards the actual bottom. Yeah, maybe absent a Tether collapse. I don't know, Max. What do you think?
Oh, well, I do want to mention for the listeners that didn't know about the bets between Jen and I guess I forgot what the first one was. What was that? What was it? $150 or something?
I think it was 115.
115.
I think.
Well, whatever it was. Basically, as the price was dropping significantly, Jen and I kept making bets. I said it can't go lower. He said it would, and he just kept winning. So 2 in a row though. And then the third, now we're kind of at a stalemate. I guess we're so low that we both are like, it is definitely the bottom. And no one wants to take the bet.
Well, we also saw, like someone else posted in the price chat that there's like that $100 psychological limit. And then I saw in another group today, like a person came in and was like, hey, I just bought 8 BCH for the first time, right? So like there is that greedy investor kind of thing where people are like, holy shit, it's time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for people that are not following the scene as regularly and stuff, they might not even know about all the CoinFlex drama and stuff, or they might. There's a lot of people out there. That's one of the things about BCH. A lot of people know BCH. They know about it. They were in the community and they've left, or they have heard about it, or they know it's controversial or whatever. And so it seems like, given that we've got that existing rep, there has to be a point at which other people just think, wait a second, this has been on my watch list for the last 4 years. It looks ridiculously cheap. This can't be right. I know this has a real community. I know it's coming in. All right. Josh knows it's not the bottom. Well, I agree. Yeah, maybe it isn't quite the bottom. Okay, next thing then is the transactions. So obviously we're looking for some kind of capitulation signals. Transactions have dropped off to about 30K. Maybe there's been a few less Flex USD transactions happening recently, but like I said last week about the cent in USD spiking up and maybe giving some indications of capitulation. Well, I think here the transactions dropping off is also a bit of a sign. You need to have a death of transactions when you actually get to the bottom, because then it just is only utility. There's no speculators, and everybody thinks it's over, dead chain, etc. So I'm not going to say that this is exactly it, but it's just another indicator that is starting to flash. Maybe we really are getting close to a bottom or in the depths of the bear market. What do you think about that, Max?
Yeah, it's kind of sucks that during like bear markets, lots of users kind of leave. That happened with Ethereum, it seems like. I mean, I had friends that were not involved in crypto. They jump in right when everything's excited, and then they just disappear. You know, they're using Uniswap and everything, and then all of a sudden, once you stop making money or get burnt, they just leave. And so you kind of just see this kind of drop off in the whole space of transactions. Kind of sucks that, like, I guess crypto is cyclical, where like, you know, these bull markets where everyone wants to participate, and then bear markets, everyone kind of leaves. But yeah, I mean, this could, transaction count is, a metric to pay attention to for sure.
But I think it was the genius of Satoshi to make it so that there was a halving cycle and supply shocks, and that it created mania. I do think that is genuinely by design, because imagine if you just had the 21 million coins and it just went out in a flat line, would it have created the hype and excitement and drama and all that to get masses of people in? I kind of can't see it happening. I mean, maybe with a flat line, if demand was then just rocketing up, then the price would just rocket up, and then maybe it would smooth off more. It wouldn't crash so hard. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what he maybe thought how adoption would occur, but it just kind of, I guess I'm just seeing the negative side, which is the bear markets, where it's people leave. Too bad they don't stay, and that'd be preferable. In an ideal world, you would want them to just continue using it like nothing happened.
But I guess the ones who do stay are the ones who get rewarded, right? That's kind of the whole point, is that everybody who just comes in if they come in the halfway through the bull pump, then you sort of miss out on a lot of the gains, and then you maybe get a bit wrecked on the other side. And if you leave during the bear market grind, you also don't get much value out of things, because you're not paying attention. You only find out about it again at the next pump, right? So it actually is kind of a way that crypto just continuously rewards people willing to push through the bear markets instead of just who gets hyped at the right time, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, there's definitely a benefit of bear markets, and it makes people kind of like rethink the whole situation. Like during the ICO boom, you don't really see the same, or at least the exact same mistakes being made during the next cycle. So like now the next cycle after this one, people are going to be more cautious about stable coins. They're going to ask more questions. They're not going to just like go in and be like, nothing can go wrong. Kind of like with ICOs. Now people are cautious when they invest in a token. They don't just jump into any ICO. They, do their due diligence. So that'll probably happen with the next cycle. People will be more cautious about NFTs, stable coins, and etc. So there's a benefit definitely to bear markets for sure.
And also yields. I think we're seeing more and more of these. BlockFi are now having problems. Voyager have closed withdrawals. Obviously, we're going to talk about CoinFlex the rest of this episode. It really is just a huge problem, I guess. Bitcoin Jason asking when stream. Is he trolling? What's going on? We're on live now. Anyway. I think this cycle, it has been NFTs, yield from centralized institutions kind of screwing up, not your keys, not your coins, and what was that other thing that you the third
Stable,
thing? Stable coins, yeah, exactly. So I think that's the trio from this cycle. That will be what the 2020 to 2021 cycle is going to be known for. So yeah, that's the transactions on a dip. We've got the cent in USD. It's still kind of bouncing around a bit. So what is this? So gosh, this stream's the nightmare. The cent USD is still happening. So yeah, that's a sign for me that we're not totally at the bottom, because I would expect cent in USD to spike and then die off when we get completely to the bottom, but that totally hasn't happened for BTC. It's still jumping around, and BTC has recovered a bit. So it seems like they're still being propped up a little bit as everything melts down, right?
It's kind of funny that Bitcoin Cash is like barely visible.
Yeah.
Flat line.
Yeah, well, it's funny because it's the same as the fee chart. Actually, it's the Bitcoin Cash fees that are just so flat versus the BTC fees. You can put the scale in logs, so you can kind of compare both of them. But I sort of want to not do that, because it really indicates how small in the whole crypto markets BCH is. And then when we start seeing it tick up, that's when we'll know the flippening is really on. That's kind of my logic. So, that's where we're at with these cent in USD. Okay, so we're going into the CoinFlex story, the big main topic of today. So for the listeners, the story so far is that in the last episode, which you may or may not have listened to, was on the 23rd of June, and that was just after CoinFlex had paused withdrawals. At that point, not very much was known. We sort of mentioned it and talked about it, but we didn't really make too much of speculation about it, because there wasn't even enough time to see what the community's reaction was, let alone to consider how this was all going to play out or what was kind of likely. But shortly before the 23rd of June, CoinFlex, who are a exchange that are very prominent in the Bitcoin Cash space, because their CEO, Mark Lamb, has been a very big Bitcoin Cash proponent, and then also other big players in the Bitcoin Cash scene like Roger Ver and Mike Komaranski have invested in this exchange, and they've been doing great, at least until recently. And they also volunteered to run the Smart Bitcoin Cash bridge, which lets people move their money from the main Bitcoin Cash chain onto the Smart Bitcoin Cash chain and back. So they were the ones kind of holding the funds and custodying back and forth, which is of course not very decentralized, but it is looks like you need to subscribe to watch. We got to fix that then. Anyway, so they were the ones holding the funds and coordinating this, with the view that at the end of the year, at the end of this year, we would have a decentralized bridge that was running automatically. So that's why CoinFlex is important, and they are one of the smaller exchanges in the broader cryptocurrency ecosystem, but they're one of the biggest ones relative to in the BCH scene, and they do a lot of BCH volume because the community rewards them for being so friendly to the scene, and also they run the bridge. So they started having withdrawal problems, which is never good, to see in a crypto exchange, but it does happen from time to time. Binance shuts off their withdrawals once in a while. Sometimes they shut off BCH or Monero, particularly the most likely to be fractional reserve coins. So they stop that. But usually when an exchange shuts off withdrawals, that's kind of the beginning of the end. So they had just done this at the end on the 23rd of June. So the community after that went into absolute chaos because when this kind of thing happens, a lot of people have money on the line, and we've seen it happen enough times that the doomsayers come out of the woodwork immediately, and not unjustified so, to be honest. But in this case, it's a special scenario because it's not only is it the people who had their coins on CoinFlex who were trading, it's also potentially the entire Smart Bitcoin Cash ecosystem that is on the line because people couldn't get their money into or out of it, even though the Smart Bitcoin Cash chain was still operating perfectly fine. So you could still do all the stuff in Smart Bitcoin Cash, you just couldn't redeem it back into regular Bitcoin Cash. So when this initial news hit, Max, what did you think? What was your first impression?
I was a little surprised, but also not extremely surprised because before this happened, we've already saw in the news of other lending platforms that seemed reputable, that were new, like BlockFi, Celsius. Now we have Voyager that that became very popular during this period where lending crypto earning yield was one of the things that got a lot more people involved. And seeing those fall down, and they were even probably significantly bigger than CoinFlex is. But it's very unfortunate because CoinFlex kind of like, I feel like it had a pretty good reputation before this happened. Like if you look up, I think even Doug Polk, who I think he's a pretty smart guy in the space. He's a professional poker player. He did his due diligence on the company, looked in the background of Mark Lamb and the others. It looked clean. It probably is clean. I think maybe CoinFlex just kind of got caught up in the hype and saw other lending platforms and like, well, we can do it too. Oh, we'll, let's give us, a lot of margin out, make some money, and, it'll probably be safe. We'll have some contracts signed. Everything will be good. But now they're kind of caught up in the same mess as all these other platforms where they just got too eager to lend and weren't cautious. They didn't, do their, proper risk management, perhaps. I mean, we don't really know what happened on internally. I mean, it'd be great to find out, why was there so much margin given out? What was the rationale behind it? I mean, we can speculate. I speculated. So, but yeah, it's surprising. It's very unfortunate for everybody that's that got involved and has funds on it or has funds on SmartBCH. Hopefully everything, resolves itself. I mean, I guess my own opinion, Mark Lamb seems like a good guy overall, but is he going to be able to get himself out of this mess? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so there's several sort of threads and elements at play. So there's the depositors who put their money onto CoinFlex, and their money is potentially at risk, obviously, if withdrawal shut down. There's the people who've got their coins locked on Smart Bitcoin Cash, which are sort of in a separate category. Then CoinFlex also runs Flex USD, which is a stable coin that you can use on Bitcoin Cash. So there are potentially the people using that are also impacted in terms of being able to get redemptions or get their yield as well. And then there's also Flex Coin, which the Flex exchange runs. That's the smallest part of the issue, basically, that they have, just like Binance or FTX or whatever. They have their own exchange token, which you can pay fees on their exchange with, and exchange activity burns that coin. So it's kind of like a weird sort of stock in the exchange that you can buy if you like that. But the fate of that is obviously wholly dependent on the exchange. It doesn't really have a separate ecosystem. So that part, if CoinFlex is having problems, FlexCoin is always going to have problems. That's just a guarantee. That's part of the risk you're taking. But the other things, there's a more sort of custodial element to it, which is part of it. And yeah, Mark Lamb definitely had had an excellent reputation, and CoinFlex actually had an excellent reputation. And like you say, so Doug Polk, for people who don't know, he's 32 or 33, I think. He was a professional poker player for about a decade. He's famous for playing heads up, one-on-one, Texas Hold'em, poker, and being really good at that. And he made, a few $1 million in that scene. And then at a certain point, he kind of got a bit bored of poker and he started getting involved in crypto, just doing trading and doing sort of podcasts and discussions and poking around with the scene a bit. Not that I've ever seen him really talk about we've even had a segment with him on this show where he was talking about Bitcoin Cash, but he's not particularly aligned with any given crypto or anything. He's not that involved, but he's sort of involved in the overall space now. And CoinFlex sponsored him to be their sort of ambassador as like a marketing thing. And so he's been shilling their stuff on his channel for the last couple of months and done some events and things with the CoinFlex team. And then when this all blew up, he was kind of a tangential part to it, because his reaction was very telling, because he would potentially have insider access to what's going on at CoinFlex. But when this first came out, he sort of denounced it and said, I don't know what's going on. I'm not involved. Nobody's really communicated with me. It just comes as a shock to me, the same as everyone else. And so at least initially, we didn't have any extra intel from him on what was going on. And it really made it look like things were in quite a mess, that the CoinFlex team had not at least been able to reach out to him and give him the heads up. Okay, wait, this is coming. If you need to put out a statement, or even just to reassure him that things were under control. If he was caught off guard, then it's no wonder that everyone was caught off guard, right? So the promise of this on the 23rd was that they would give an update on the 27th. And I think in that time period, I was less worried. I was kind of like, well, we'll just wait and see what the update is on the 27th. There's no need to be Chicken Little today. But I think overall, I think the community handled it fairly well, except for the most involved people on the Telegram groups and on our BTC, who immediately just started roasting Mark Lamb and just calling him a scammer. And just obviously we didn't have very many details, but just this one, after so many years of being a good contributor to the space, this one instance of, okay, guys, we've shut off exchanges without much of an explanation, was just instantly just thrown to the wolves, which just, to me, kind of reinforced how fickle the cryptocurrency community can be. Not to say that anybody was necessarily wrong. An exchange shouldn't be shutting off withdrawals, and that's a huge red flag. But I think it was quite incredible to see how little patience or tolerance he got from the community at that immediate early stage. That's what I noticed anyway.
But yeah, I mean, when your money is locked away, people are going to get angry pretty quickly. And I will say Mark Lamb's doing an okay job of, I'm glad he's keeping involved and communicating and trying to answer what he can. But I did find some things kind of strange, though, like with Doug Polk, like he was not informed. He found out through Twitter that a place that he, advertises for, essentially, on his own YouTube channel and has his own reputation kind of pulled into this, that he was not like immediately called and say, hey, heads up, there's some stuff going down. We need to do it. We need to, have you involved in a meeting immediately and inform him what's going on. So that was one weird thing. Second one was just like more like small things, but they're really big. Like they didn't immediately put on their website like, hey, do not use this. Like, we're having liquidity issues, we're having solvency issues, whatever it is, however you want to put it. Put a red flag. Don't use, don't deposit, don't make an account, make it difficult for people to get involved in this. Maybe it was just kind of overlooked, but just a lot of small things here and there that are just kind of like strange. And then like kind of like, it's weird how they were like, I think Mark Lamb posted it to Roger Ver. That was the one that is
Yeah,
involved
we're
in this bet.
we're getting
Okay,
to that.
okay,
We're
okay.
gonna get to that.
I
We're gonna
won't go
get to
too
that.
far, but yeah,
So that
lots
was
of strange things.
yeah, the initial reaction definitely was like suboptimal in terms of CoinFlex, in terms of how they communicated it. And yeah, Mark was still answering people on Telegram, but I think you can even still deposit to CoinFlex now, which is pretty scammy, all things considered. Like it should have been we've disabled withdrawals and deposits because we don't want to screw over anyone new throwing their funds into the
It's just
Ponzi scheme fire, right? Basically. So, that's pretty messed up. So anyway, you wait a couple of days, the community's in a bit of turmoil, and then it comes to the 27th of June where they had promised this update. And so I was sort of expecting a blog post, which they did do, but instead what happened was Mark said he was going to go on Bloomberg on TV, which is on the next slide. So we've got the full segment. It's a 9-minute segment where he's on Bloomberg TV and he talks to the host and he explains kind of what the plan is for CoinFlex. And we're going to play the whole 9 minutes because I think this is super important to cryptocurrency history and to BCH for the listeners to be able to make their own mind up about all what was happening. So Jet's going to line that up for us, and we'll just have that 9-minute segment. But as we're getting that ready to go, I just watching this live. I mean, there's a part of me that enjoys this stuff. Really, it's like being in The Big Short, or like when Mount Gox collapsed, or any of these huge blow-ups. Obviously, it's terrible, and a lot of people are getting wrecked and ruined. But as an outside observer, it's also kind of part of the fun of cryptocurrency. Like at least for me, I like being involved in all this financial history, seeing it happen live, and sitting up late to watch this announcement. It was crazy,
I guess it depends if you're at risk, right? Like if you had money in CoinFlex, a lot of it, it's not too fun. But yeah, I mean, from people when you don't have any, skin in the game, it is entertainment, I guess, right?
I mean,
like,
I have skin in the game. I definitely have skin in the game. I don't have money on CoinFlex.
I meant like having skin in the the entertainment part.
Yeah.
Then it's stressful.
Yeah, I mean, I was stressed out, even just being a BCH holder and having the BCH ecosystem being in this kind of compromised spot. It's still really bad for me. But there's a part of it that is kind of circus like in some respects. All right, Jed, we got that clip ready to go.
Hedge fund Three Arrows Capital, which is facing its own liquidity troubles, created even more anxiety. Then came Babel Finance, pausing withdrawals. Now CoinFlex, the crypto physical futures exchange, is in the spotlight. Our crypto contributor, Sonali Basak, here to give us the lay of the land. Sonali?
Yeah, something interesting here, Emily, is that in addition to the situations that you had talked about, when it comes to CoinFlex, the counterparty was not Three Arrows Capital or another lending firm. We're going to get some more details about that in just a second, but just as equally interesting here is how the industry is being shored up in the middle of this crypto winter and liquidity crunch. We're going to talk about just how that's going to happen now with Mark Lamb, the CEO of CoinFlex. CoinFlex is looking to bring back their operations in more normal form, resuming with withdrawals by Thursday, June 30th. And one of the ways that you said to me today that you're planning on doing that is by issuing a new token. That is almost $50 million. That's $47 million worth with a 20% yield. That is a large return to investors who would get into this token. But Mark, tell me, what does this token actually represent? Who is it making whole? How is it making them whole? And what happens if you can't raise that money?
Yeah, sure. So at CoinFlex, fundamentally, we believe in markets, transparency, and tokenization. So we've done that with one of our other products, FlexUSD. It's on markets. It's funding a market, our repo market, and it's a token. And we're doing that again here with the recovery value USD, so RVUSD. it's a way for us to use tokenization to solve this problem, where we have this asset, which is it's an ultra high net worth individual. They owe us these funds. We do believe that they're going to get us these funds at some point in the future. And we wanted to make it such that the assets all match up and everything matches up in a way where it's a market-based, and we pass on this risk to investors that understand what the risk is and are eager for this risk, and basically solve the problem. Right now, we can't have withdrawals. There are lots of different ways of solving these problems in crypto finance. And crypto generally is on the cutting edge of finance. And one of the ways that hasn't been as successful in the past is when companies put their head in the sand or refuse to communicate or go hide behind the excuse of lawyers. Rather than treating lawyers as advisors and consigliaries in creating solutions that resolve the problem extremely quickly, and also in a way where more people get to participate in the solution.
Mark, assuming that this does work, that you're able to raise this token and withdrawals do begin again on June 30th, are you afraid that you will face a run on the bank in that kind of a scenario?
We're not worried about that scenario because upon this fundraise being concluded, everyone can withdraw. And so we want everything to be always matched at all times. And in situations where that isn't, we have to intervene, we have to do these things. We are going forward, we're going to take even further steps on making every aspect of the exchange transparent, including the futures positions, the notional value, not the specific coin, but the notional value of every account's positions public via an external auditing firm, and also the margin backing those positions. And we think that ultimately that's in line with our ethos from day one. We've wanted everything to be market-based, transparent, and tokenized.
What's your longer term plan, Mark, to make sure that if we experience this kind of volatility in the market again, and certainly the crypto market will experience this volatility again, it is a volatile market, that this won't happen, that it all doesn't come down to or depend on one individual?
Yeah, so part of the issue here was, and this is common practice in crypto, and really it originates from traditional finance, but we had a customer on a personal recourse-based non-liquidation account. We will be eliminating that type of account. We will also be making these positions public, and you won't just have to take our word for it. We have an auditing firm that we're going to be working with to have them publish this data. And this is much needed data in futures. There isn't a single crypto futures exchange in the world, including here in the US, that makes this data public around position sizes and the margin ratios, margin balances, and collateral backing those positions. And it is one of those things where there's a balance between transparency and privacy. Right now in DeFi, they've set the standard in terms of transparency, and we need to do at least as good as, if not much better than, DeFi with respect to transparency so that depositors and users can feel comfortable trading. It has a damage to privacy, but we think that traders are going to find that worthwhile for the additional comfort that they get from knowing the risk and the leverage implicit in the system.
So what's your message to customers right now? What's the level of confidence, your level of confidence, that in the 3 days between now and June 30th, you're going to make that date?
Yeah, I'm highly confident. We have spoken to people nonstop on phone calls and in-person meetings since this issue arose. And we have more than half of the amount needed in soft commitments to get this done. And so I'm highly confident that there's strong appetite from within the crypto space and also in the broader institutional space in this type of token. We're turning a problem into an opportunity, and we're also turning that into an opportunity that gets resolution very, very quickly. This is something where at the end of this offering, the problem is solved within a matter of days. This is something that's been done before in crypto's history, and it's been extremely successful when it's been done before in crypto.
What kind of pressure do you feel to reveal more details about who this investor is who couldn't meet the margin calls initially, especially when this new token is tied to their fortunes? The people who will be investing in this new token are doing it to make this other investor that they don't know whole.
Yeah, that's a great question. And look, I think the market is always going to demand more and more transparency. So we're going to be revealing as much information as we can as we're able to reveal that information. At this point, this is what we can give. And we wanted to very, very quickly be fully transparent about what happened, how we're resolving it, and our plan going forward to protect customers and be fully transparent to customers about all the leverage in the system and how it's collateralized. But I think the market will demand that information. I think the market will try to pursue that information. And that's the beautiful and powerful thing about markets. And that's the important thing about transparency. And I think that's what's going to happen going forward.
This one customer, I mean, how do you know whether he or she can pay you back? How much confidence do you have that you will get that money back? And what confidence can you give customers that you would remain solvent and be able to continue operations in normal form if they can't pay you back?
Yeah, so we have alternative mechanisms if we're not able to conclude this raise. We have alternative mechanisms we're looking at and we have on the table. Really, the focus is on this mechanism because it actually opens up a new type of asset for customers to invest in. And I think there's a lot of people very familiar with the situation. I think there's a lot of people who want access to this type of yield. So again, we want to turn this into an opportunity for people. We want to be totally transparent about what happened. And we also want to make it clear going forward, every bit of data about the inner workings of our exchange is going to be public. We already are extremely public about all the data in our exchange, but this is an area for us to go even further and even more cutting edge on the transparency note.
All right, Mark Lamb, CEO of CoinFlex. Thank you, Mark, for coming and sharing your side of what's happening with us, along with our very own Sonali Basak. Appreciate it. Coming up,
So my impression watching this at the time was my heart was dropping. I was like spewing. I was thinking this is a complete disaster, to be honest. I had been optimistic up until this point, but after this video, after this segment was live, I thought this is an absolute disaster. He talked so much about how everyone can participate in the solution, and it seemed just beyond ridiculous that the solution to having these missing funds was to not really name the whale and to be looking to kind of protect them, and then to issue basically a new scam token that was going to get dumped on retail. It was going to try and get retail to buy in to cover the whale's shortfall, essentially. And then basically it looked like Mark was trying to bail out his mate because he was trying to get retail investors to buy a new scam coin, which would essentially cover the losses that his, whale friend had accrued on his own platform. He didn't really say who the whale was or didn't really give any more information about that. And there was obviously no mention about Smart Bitcoin Cash and the 100,000 coins that the community has kind of locked up in all this, much aside from the actual depositors to the exchange. So initially, this whole plan of we're $47 million down, we're going to issue this recovery value USD token at the 20% APR. It just looked like the crypto disaster. It was just getting worse at every single step. Now, it turned out afterwards that he just did a very poor job of explaining the fact that this token was not being sold to retail. It was only being sold to accredited high net worth investors, which actually changes the scenario quite significantly, because unlike clueless retail idiots on CoinMarketCap, this means people are buying into the debt who actually know what's going on and potentially have insider access. So they might be able to get more guarantees about what was going on. They might be able to find out who the whale is. They might have more sort of sureties. They might have more legal recourse and more, millions of dollars to hire lawyers and get to the bottom of it all if there's a problem. So afterwards, the fact that it was actually only to accredited, big money institutions rather than being sold to scam the public did make a significant change. But initially, I think Mark did a terrible job of sort of explaining that. And I think he looked really nervous on the broadcast. And I think everybody just picked up on that and thought, God, this is fucked. Certainly the initial reaction from this wasn't favorable either. What do you think, Max?
Yeah, I think he may need like a public relations advisor or something, because he does seem to say something and it just sounds worse than it actually is sometimes. And when you're announcing a new token to try to cover the debt, it just sounds like you might be trying to scam retail. One thing that's interesting is, why are they tokenizing it, right? If there's other ways to sell debt in traditional finance that doesn't need a token. So is it a way for these investors to buy the token then dump on retail once they own it? Let them trade it on CoinFlex or another platform. I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the token part of it was also weird, because then it meant that you had to be outside the US to be one of these accredited investors, because if you were inside the US, then it would be under their unregistered securities laws or whatever. So you would get caught up in that as well too. So yeah, it's right. They at the scale they're doing it, they should be able to just get out the lawyers and just draft up, because if it is going to be big, it's basically just a bailout. So adding the whole token element didn't really make a lot of sense and made it seem so much scammier than it was, although it's obviously still scammy to have shut down the withdrawals anyway. And one element that seemed very clear to it, which in my mind, the solution was actually, why didn't they just figure out what assets they did have, figure out what the shortfall was, and then you could just immediately say, okay, you could do it the other way around. And instead of saying, okay, we're going to keep the exchange locked off until we find buyers for this massive amount of debt, why don't we just give everybody, let's say it's a 30% haircut, we just give everybody 30% less, reopen the exchange with everybody's balances downshifted, that certain amount, and then also give everyone some whale cash out tokens, which are worthless when you give it to them. But you say, look, once we chase up the whale, or once we get the money back or whatever, then we'll credit you for your whale tokens. So in that way, you immediately reopen the exchange. You're letting everybody take out their money to the extent that they still have that money in whatever portion it is. And then you can be trying to handle the whale afterwards, or trying to chase up debt or whatever, do that on your own time and not keep the community screwed in this entire situation. I don't really understand why that wasn't an option, but it seemed like they were terrified of giving people a haircut. It seems like they still are, to be honest, but especially initially,
Well, one thing is, we don't know how big of a haircut it's going to be. I think Doug Polk mentioned in his resignation video, where he's resigning from being the brand ambassador, he mentioned that one question we don't know is, what do we have instead of what can we get? Because right now, what can we get is to fix everything. But what do we actually have that's left? And we don't know that.
Well, there was a clue on the slides of that Bloomberg thing where it said $160 million or $167 million of assets or something like that.
Oh,
so if
maybe.
there's, of course, that might not be totally, but that was clearly the numbers that CoinFlex gave to Bloomberg. And I mean, it's also possible they could have just lied, but I feel like, well, maybe that's about right. So, I mean, the bridge stuff is about 10 million. there's 47 million missing from the whale, and that was clearly a big enough chunk that it was sort of like we gotta stop this. This is enough. And then that's okay. So 47 million there, 10 million for the BCH. Okay, and then that's roughly 1/3 of what the rest of their user deposits and the Flex USD and the Flex coin and everything like that. It sort of roughly makes sense. So to me, it seemed like it would maybe be about 30% to 35% of the exchange assets are missing with this 47 million. And I think if you gave everyone a 33% haircut and then just give them back their coins immediately with, okay, we'll get the rest of this topped up when we either find somebody that we can sell some equity to and get a bailout, or when the whale decides to pay up. To me, that would have been a much better solution. But it just seems like they're obsessed with not giving everyone a haircut. But ultimately, if you don't sort this out, then you've given everyone 100% haircut, and how is that any better, right?
Yeah, the haircut might be the last resort where maybe after enough time goes by, they'll resort to some sort of haircut, or who knows, actually. I don't know.
I don't know, Jet. I just wanted to get your take as well. When you were watching this live, what did you think?
Oh, I thought this was bad. Like, I think, he should have had a PR person for sure. Because, so I feel like that last question, I don't know, I've listened to this and watched this a couple times now, and every time she gets that last question where she's like, why would someone buy this token? I feel like he does not give a even reasonable answer. It's not even like a marketing answer. It's like a complete avoidance of the goddamn question. And so I thought this was like foolish. Like, either have scripted and allowed questions and answers so that it looks good, or like have some training so that it looks good, or don't do it. Like, seemed foolish. Now, I think like how they reacted before this, like, I think it's overconfident. I think a lot of it is overconfident. I think the reason they were even in this situation is because of overconfidence. Like, there was a post in, I think, the CoinFlex Telegram chat from last December where Mike had tagged Mark and was like, I hope you're not running fractional reserve BCH. And he said, we're not. I don't know if that's like siloed to BCH, but how are we in this position if it's not fractional reserve based? And on top of that too, like on the website, it says you can redeem your Flex USD 1-to-1 with USDC. And if the market of that, I think it dropped to as low as like 36 cents US. How in the hell is that the case? Well, because it's not actually, 1-to-1, it's 10% and the other 90% is margin trading. So I think watching this was bad, like just bad.
Just one comment to make. I know they always advertise that they're fully collateralized. And now this kind of pretty much says they were lying the whole time. They're not fully collateralized. I mean, they could kind of try to stretch it a bit, saying, well, in the contract, it said that, if he has to pay his margin call, he says he signed it that he would sell whatever assets to cover the margin collateral, but like in reality the collateral wasn't on the platform to where it could be automatically liquidated. It was something that was agreed upon outside of it. It's not really fully collateralized, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious too, what percentage of CoinFlex's users are BCH users? And then what percentage, like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm interested in the transparency thing. I'd like to see the real numbers for how many or what assets they have on hand, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't understand even like why SmartBCH users or the main chain BCH that's locked up for this was exposed to any of CoinFlex's dealings. That seems like such a misstep.
Well, that's kind of in the aftermath. That's come out as one of the big points of contention, right? Is that everybody sort of says, okay, so CoinFlex volunteered to run this, and it sort of, obviously in hindsight, it's easy to say, oh, a centralized solution, this was always a stupid idea. But the fact is, before this happened, it was not actually that terrible of an idea, in the sense that CoinFlex are a very long-running exchange. They do have the capabilities to secure, cold storage of 100,000 Bitcoin Cash and have all the legal and financials and the sort of administrative stuff in place. Like, you can't just give any, Johnny 100,000 Bitcoin Cash and say, look after this, because it's not really that simple, right? The institutional grade storage of that amount of money is not actually a simple thing to do, and having all the processes and checks and everything. And they were actually very well positioned to do that. So it was, okay, we're just going to kind of just trust CoinFlex until we get the decentralized bridge out. And now it's all gone to shit, right? So, in hindsight, it didn't make any sense. But it's not like there was better options available in terms of the only other option was just not have smart Bitcoin Cash for all this time and wait for the decentralized bridge, which, okay, in an alternate universe, that's what we could have done. But how would things have played out if we hadn't had the community already testing and building apps and all this stuff going on, in a different reality where we just waited an extra 2 years and launched it with a decentralized bridge and everything? Well, maybe that would be a perfect utopia. But that also misses out the scenario that we had been on this track and we did it this way, and CoinFlex didn't blow up, and then everything was going great, and we had 2 years of extra lead time, right? So yeah, it does seem stupid that the money was not in a separate pot from the rest of the CoinFlex assets, but I think that's more on CoinFlex rather than the community. I think the community were just sort of like, okay, CoinFlex are competent and they will put this in a separate kind of thing, but now it's wrapped up in everything else. And given the scenario at CoinFlex is shaky, Mark is not really willing to release the money, both, from a financial point of view, and I guess also, at least he would say, how much is up to audience interpretation. From a legal perspective, he doesn't want to just give back that money and then to find out that he's on the hook, for giving away this money that should have been in a liquidation procedure or something like that. So
I'm guessing the lawyers are just like, just shut everything down, because we don't know who owns what technically, right? Like, is it because I don't know if, we don't know I don't know how it worked, but I'm guessing it wasn't like a separate legal entity that they created for smartBCH, right? It was very intermingled with the exchange to where who's actually in possession of it. I don't know how it was set up, like internally, or even through the people that are, helping out with smartBCH with, I don't know who even owns those keys, or is it a multi-sig wallet? All that BCH that's in possession of CoinFlex, like 100,000 Bitcoin Cash.
So CoinFlex have that money, but they also have these guys, Fireblocks, who are sort of an institutional grade multi-sig. And this is what I'm saying. Just anybody just setting all this up is not actually that simple. But they have these guys who also have at least some of the keys. I don't know if they are required to sign or if it's just a backup, or I don't know exactly how that works. But the point is they are also involved in this somehow, and the smartBCH coins are still there. They haven't moved from the address, so the community at least knows that the money hasn't gone. It hasn't all been sold off in CoinFlex exchange or whatever. It hasn't got really that bad, but it's just kind of in limbo at the moment. And I guess depending on, in the best case scenario, this kind of all somehow works out where somewhere or another the 47 million gets covered, either because the whale gives the money back, or because outside investors buy this token to try and yield 20%, or because they buy some equity or something, or perhaps even CoinFlex goes bust, but one way or another, Mark Lamb, assuming he's still sort of acting in the interest of the community, manages to sort of throw the football out. He gets the 100K BCH back out to the community, and then everything sort of collapses at CoinFlex. Like, one way or another, the money gets handed off to someone else, right?
It makes
Yeah,
me
it's very complicated.
it makes me wonder what like reputational what the change in like reputational damage would be if rather than them shutting down withdrawals and being like, oh well, we'll come back, like we'll re-enable them at some point. We still have all this BCH, but we might not be able to move it unless I can see in if it was the case that Mark ends up behind prison for touching those locked BCH. Yeah, okay, do what you need to do to stay out of prison, sure. But to get to the point, I wonder what the difference in reputation would be if rather than doing this, he was like, okay, we're going to release all that like locked up main chain BCH if you want to get out. And if CoinFlex does go tits up, well, we have a solid team. Like we can just start another exchange. Would that new exchange have just as little reputation as what I think CoinFlex currently has? Or would it have more?
Well, I feel that the most of the reason that the community is upset in the first place is the whole Smart Bitcoin Cash angle. To me, that seems to be the core of the issue. It's obviously it's not the core of the issue for Mark because he's trying to save his exchange and all that stuff. But for the rest of the community, if the Smart Bitcoin Cash system is still working, if the bridge coins were out of there and were held by someone else or whatever in an alternate universe, I think everybody would be like, oh no, CoinFlex. But anyway, that Jeremy Clarkson type of meme, the thing I think everybody's so cut up about is this money that they thought, even though it was always clear from the start, okay, CoinFlex is holding these temporarily, and Mark seems to have been a good actor. I mean, in the light of all this circumstances, people have varying interpretations, charitably or uncharitably, of that now. But up to this point, it seemed like he was cooperating with the community, and it was all going great. Because if CoinFlex went bust regularly, the people who would be at fault would be the ones who just had their money in there for trading or for whatever, and then it's just kind of the same. Not your keys, not your coins. 3 Arrows Capital, Voyager, BlockFi. It's just the same as all of them. If you got caught up in it, it was your own stupid fault. But this Smart BCH thing is kind of a different category because it was done on a basis of community goodwill as a collective to advance the scene as a whole, rather than individual gambling on exchanges kind of an idea. I don't know. I think that would have been hugely different if the Smart BCH coins had been separate. Okay, so the next thing that happened was, so we had all this on the 27th, and then things got even more kicking off on the 28th when Roger Ver came out with a tweet. People were sort of speculating that it might be him. He sort of matched the profile. He'd been involved in CoinFlex. He's obviously an ultra high net worth individual, very well known, etc. He put out a tweet saying, recently some rumors have been spreading that I have defaulted on a debt to a counterparty. These rumors are false. Not only do I not have a debt to this counterparty, but this counterparty owes me a substantial sum of money, and I'm currently seeking the return of my funds. So, end quote. So this, speculation is going absolutely wild at this point. He kind of phrased it in a weird way, and he also had this weird formatting on his tweet with a line break at the end. I guess he must have just copied it and pasted it in from his lawyer's email to him or something. But he sent out this weird tweet saying, he didn't even say specifically CoinFlex was the counterparty or anything like that. He just, it was obvious that was what it was about, but he kind of said it in this weird way. And he said, look, I'm not the whale, because people had sort of cottoned on to the fact that recovery value USD is RVUSD, right? It's like a intentional or not. That's another weird element to this. Was it intentional by CoinFlex to sort of signal right from the start to everybody that it is Roger Ver, or was that just an oversight that they could have called it CoinFlex USD and nobody would have been any the wiser initially? Did they want everybody to make that connection? Like, what's
they wanted that? Well, I think someone, I don't know who mentioned it, but I think they wanted Roger to know that that, hey, if you don't pay up, your your initials are already on the token name. And maybe it was like a way to like encourage him to pay off the debt.
But they could also know that the community would then figure that out, right? So you're sort of firing off preemptively by putting the initials in there, if you know what I'm saying.
Right. I feel like it's be far for a coincidence. I don't know what the intention was exactly, but there was definitely a reason why they put it in there.
Yeah. So anyway, Roger says, look, it's not me. And then immediately this people, are speculating, is Roger Ver being honest, which he also, the same as CoinFlex, has a very, very good reputation and history for the most part, with maybe a couple of exceptions, and obviously everybody has a different opinion, right? But on the whole, very highly regarded and also very high integrity, not known for lying, particularly. So it seemed like, okay, well, we should probably take it at face value. But then you had, in under an hour after he made this tweet, you then had a counter tweet from Mark Lamb, who said that it was him. So Mark posted, quote, Roger Ver owes CoinFlex 47 million USDC. We have a written contract with him obliging him to personally guarantee any negative equity on his CoinFlex account and top up margin regularly. He has been in default of this agreement and we have served a notice of default. He had a long track record of previously topping up margin and meeting margin requirements in accordance with the agreement. We have been speaking to him on calls frequently about this situation with the aim of resolving it. We would still like to resolve it. He is denying that the debt pertains to him, and so we felt the need to clarify to the public that yes, the debt is 100% related to his account. Roger Ver is a citizen of the European Union who we believe has significant assets in the US, UK, and other relevant jurisdictions. CoinFlex also categorically denies that we have any debts owing to him. This statement is blatantly false. It is unfortunate that Roger Ver needs to resort to such tactics in order to deflect from his liabilities and responsibilities, end quote. So at this point, we've now, we've now got a sort of who said what scenario where it seems like at least one of them has to be lying, right? Either Roger isn't the counterparty like he claimed, or he is like Mark said he is. And it seems that he probably is, but that the dispute is really over whatever happened with the $47 million. And was he trading on CoinFlex and then for some reason not wanting to pay back the margin and the loans and everything. So what did you make of things after these tweets came out? What did you think?
I would say I was surprised that, first of all, why are they announcing this through a tweet? Like it's kind of unprofessional a bit to be doxing somebody on a tweet. I mean, maybe releasing a statement or something instead. And then in terms of what went down, it's probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, I'm sure it probably is Roger Ver that is the person that owes the money. But the question is why does he think he doesn't owe the money? I'm sure there's something there that we don't know because Roger's not saying anything. That, for whatever reason, maybe they liquidated his position early or just something weird on the platform. That's just me speculating, but there must have been something went down where he thought he was in the right. And it's like, why'd you do that? Or I didn't mean to do that. And your platform did this, or I didn't, there's some sort of disagreement there of who owes who what. And I'm sure, we just don't have the information really. Like Roger hasn't said much and we don't know how much. He didn't say in his tweet like how much the counterparty owes him. He just says substantial amount, while Mark is being very specific. It's 47 million that you owe us. So that's a bit interesting as well.
Yeah, so there was all these kind of theories coming out of people trying to say, okay, what could or couldn't have happened. I think the most the most popular one, or there's essentially just a lot of variations on the theme of, okay, Roger was trying to basically get margin trade on BCH. I mean, he could have actually been trying to margin trade on any coin, but I think everybody just thinks that he would be trying to margin trade.
Everyone's
Bitcoin
assuming
Cash.
he's just longing Bitcoin Cash as it dips and then just keeps getting liquidated.
Yeah, exactly. And so then he is in, and because he had this agreement with Mark or with the exchange, that he's not going to get liquidated because he just has shitloads of money and he can basically withstand any amount of negative downside pressure, which I'm amazed that that's a thing at all. I mean, Mark said that other traditional finance and crypto exchanges do this all the time, I guess, between banks, where it's kind of like you can be billions and billions and billions of dollars in the red, and it's literally just like, oh, okay, that's just a couple bucks between friends. But I'm amazed that this is a thing at all. It seems to me more like everybody should want to be protecting their own money and not winding up in this situation. But I guess that's how you get the 2008 financial crisis. So anyway, we have a mini version of that going on here, and everybody seems to assume that Roger was trying to go long on Bitcoin Cash. The price kept dropping. Eventually he's in the red, $47 million, and then Mark was like, okay, Roger, you need to put some more money into backing this up, and Roger said no. And then so they just said, fine, fuck you, then we'll just close it off. Like, that's kind of the end of the free ride deal, and that then they're now out $47 million with Roger, who doesn't want to pay, and then they're like, holy crap, this is actually really bad, and then shut off all the withdrawals, and now we're in this mess. That's so, but I'm sure that, because I really want to look at this situation and find a way that neither of them is lying. I think in these kind of situations where if it was a different case where you had people who had lower sort of integrity or goodwill, like in other crypto scenes where things blow up and you just have somebody who's just there to grift, basically, I think it's kind of a different scenario with everybody just trying to save their skin. But in this case with Mark and Roger particularly, who have been in Bitcoin Cash for years and years, and everybody knows that Bitcoin Cash is the passion coin, that you're in it for the vision. Like, if you want to just grift up some bullshit, there's a lot of easier places to do it. And both of them do honestly believe in the whole peer-to-peer cash mission. So it seems to me the more likely case is some kind of scenario where, from their own perspective, both of them are telling the truth, but there's kind of a middle ground there, where Roger thought, okay, well, they shouldn't have been closing off my account because we had this deal. But Mark's kind of like, yeah, but you wouldn't put up the margin, and it's left open to interpretation. We also haven't seen that this contract that Mark says he has, that Roger signed. We haven't seen really any further details about that. What was in that? Any rules or other verbal agreements that were agreed on top of that. Obviously, contract law can get pretty murky pretty fast on that front. But I think at this point, especially, somebody did a poll, I think, in the Telegram chat, and basically said, look, whose fault do you think it is? Do you think it's Rogers or Mark's, if you had to pick a side? And obviously they should have also probably given an option for both and or neither, but they didn't do that. So just on the pick a side front, at this point, the community, or the Telegram group, at least it was surveyed, was almost exactly 50-50. So, I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, that's very weird, because I mean, CoinFlex is the one that's supposed to be the responsible, institution, the business that's supposed, like, no risk management, like, they're giving out so much margin to an individual client, to where the point where if that client does not pay, that their whole business operations just have to immediately shut down. Like, what was the thought process in their head that they thought this was, okay, like, this is like not high risk, that what they were doing when they were giving out this margin to begin with. That just kind of surprises me that they would, like I said, I think back earlier, and earlier in the episode, I said like they kind of got caught up just like how Celsius and BlockFi did, where it's just like, just give out, let people borrow as many coins as they want to these institutions that may become insolvent or, default on their loans. With like, for example, 3 Arrows Capital defaulting. Now you have Roger defaulting on his loan. And it's like, I mean, you can blame those, but I'd blame the ones that were giving them all that margin or all that, let them borrow so much money. It's just, feels like that they didn't, think through before they made these deals.
Well, I think, yeah, obviously, CoinFlex are sort of definitely complicit in this in one sense, but especially at this moment in time, I think some of the sentiment running against Roger was sort of like, if this scenario that we've talked about, what is this? What are you trying to show us here, Jet? You're gonna have to speak up. I can't read that, man.
Read it for us.
Also,
so this is a poll with only 52 votes. But it says, who takes the L responsible for the fuck up? Roger Ver, 8%. CoinFlex, 33%. Fuck them both, 59%.
Yeah, and that was from the BCH, the podcast Telegram, right?
Yeah, it was forwarded. I don't know where it came from originally, but
right. Okay, so yeah, if you give the option for both, that was clearly heavily the favored option. Everybody felt like they're both, whatever the scenario, it takes two to fight, basically, right?
I think the reason why people might be choosing Roger is because they was like a trusted member in the community, like people saying he's responsible. He should have been smart enough that he knew what he was doing when he was going to default on this loan. If I default on this loan, everybody in this community is going to lose their money or have a really tough time trying to recover their money. So it kind of an act, because think of it, if it was like just a random person, like no one knew this person, just some random rich person that never was involved in crypto. No one knows their name, high net worth individual, borrowed a bunch, defaulted. Would they say that's the person to blame? Probably not, because they don't have their name isn't well known in the community. They weren't, trusted anything. Then it would just be all the blame on Mark Lamb and CoinFlex. At least that's my speculation. If that was the situation, it wasn't Roger, it was just some other random individual no one ever heard of, everyone would just be pointing their fingers at probably CoinFlex. But maybe I'll be wrong.
Yeah, but I think that's right. I think that's the key element to this, is that we always talk about the Bitcoin Cash community, and as much as that word is totally overused by every bloody influencer trying to make a quick buck off people, again, especially with Bitcoin Cash, it really is a community in the sense that we're all on a mission and we're all on a team, and people grifting and scamming and doing like shady shit kind of impacts the coin, which impacts everyone. It impacts trust. It impacts the ability for us to actually change the world, right? As a team. So, and unfortunately for Roger, it's kind of working against him that he has been at the forefront of that and has so much goodwill that it's probably then more likely that people are kind of willing to be like, oh, you screwed us over, finding fault with him in that way. I think
they both have reputations at stake, right? At least within this community, the ones that were affected, like both reputations are now, treading on thin water essentially, and probably
putting it mildly.
They always say it takes years to build reputation, but like what, seconds to destroy it. So it's kind of what we're seeing right now with both CoinFlex and Roger.
Yeah, and I mean, we haven't really heard, Omar's pointing out in the chat, we haven't really heard the full side of the story from Roger yet. We will apparently be hearing that tomorrow on a Bitcoin Cash hangout. He said he's going to come on and talk about that. So we might be able to get more of his perspective. And then maybe that's another reason why initially things were kind of balanced, or Roger seemed to be getting a lot of the blame, was that his initial sort of PR strategy seemed to be to just sit tight and say nothing. I mean, who knows what was going on behind the scenes, but it has been very unfortunate for both of them to be caught up in this. And there's certainly an element that they've seen both to blame from the outside, just because it takes two to argue kind of thing. So if, you know, whatever happened, the fact that they couldn't hold it together on either end enough to just find a resolution privately among themselves, and they had to turn it into this huge blow up and this huge issue for the whole community, is kind of why they're both, you know, suffering some.
The drama is very fascinating. Hopefully we can get more information, just like what went down exactly, detail for detail. That'd be awesome.
But I think it's also very, just in general for the community as well, it's super hard because the BCH community, you know, it had the BTC fork, then it had the BSV fork, then it had the eCash fork, and each of those was this tough, grinding, like, community battle and everything. And then it seemed like finally the community was on the same page, things were going in the right direction. Okay, is the price maybe not doing so well, but everything else in the scene seemed to be going great, and everybody was like feeling re-energized. Smart Bitcoin Cash is coming, the hard fork upgrade went great, all this stuff's going great, and just as the sun is starting to shine, now we're in another lot of drama. I mean, to be optimistic, or to put a silver lining on this, the good point is that this is drama that isn't going to cause a chain split to begin with, and it's not drama among the devs and the core network governance. So things have kind of moved out a layer, and that's always a good sign, because as your scene gets bigger and as drama moves kind of more to the periphery, the amount of the economy so this is quite substantial in what it impacts on the BCH economy, right? It's actually quite a big chunk, but it's still less than literally everybody, which is what a fork impacts.
Do we want to? I can run a Twitch poll here, see what our viewers think.
Okay, all right. Let's get the live thoughts from them. I'll leave it up to you to decide with the exact wording of the question and the options. But yeah, let's hear from the listeners. And while we're doing that, I
did have one question. What do you think was the most impactful, or at least the biggest hurdle that Bitcoin Cash had to like overcome? Is it the BTC BCH fork, the BSV, eCash, or this, like, or any other events that like caused the biggest amount of devastation or problems?
Oh, it had to be the original fork, at least in my mind. I was less involved, like not really involved at all in either of the BSV or the eCash forks. So maybe that was, you know, more of a drama. I was less involved, but I think it's hard to go past the original BTC fork and being censored out in the way that things were. Just the chaos was unreal, even in the sense that the BSV and the eCash fork, after those forks were done, it was known that you could have a fork and survive it. Basically, that first time, it was this close to the brink. Like, in fact, the whole way it launched and stuff, I you know, pretty much was in favor of it as pretty much as soon as it did happen. But I personally wasn't in the position of the technical know-how and everything to launch a fork. And to everyone who was involved and who got together and who did it, you know, I'm eternally grateful to. But there just was so much discussion, suppression. There was so many shady deals going on. There was so much manipulation. There was so much confusion. It could have easily not happened. And there was all this stuff. There was this multiple attacks in terms of, okay, we're going to have the small block fork, but then they sort of wanted to do SegWit. But then there was like, we're going to have SegWit 2x, which is going to be kind of a middle ground, which was sort of a bit of a distractionary tactic that never played out. Because at the end of the day, people either wanted a block size or they wanted SegWit. Nobody really wanted.
I do wonder how like big the smartBCH is compared to like the whole ecosystem, because it didn't really like it didn't affect the price so much. Like when it went down, it was just maybe if it did, it was very not noticeable. So I always wonder, like, are people, because I always kind of think that people just see Bitcoin Cash as like this, you know, like cheap knockoff Bitcoin, like outside the crypto community, that anything that happens internally almost goes unnoticed unless it's like something really big, like a hard fork, like the BSV hard fork, for example, then people outside the community kind of take notice. But
well, that's an element to this CoinFlex
Yeah.
drama as well, too, is the fact that there was some, ridiculing and stuff from the outside. And basically, yeah, we have to take an L on that when your community is in this kind of drama. Like everyone else just kind of gets a free pass to pile on, and you just got to suck it up. But on the other hand, there was like somebody was publishing lists of, okay, here's all the crypto meltdowns this week, and this, and BCH didn't even make the list. Like CoinFlex was not even called out. So
yeah, it seemed like a story that didn't really get covered a whole lot.
That's right.
Yeah.
BCH always sucks from having the the low publicity and like getting less media attention and stuff like that. But in the rare cases, or maybe even the regular cases that we're having drama, then it's kind of a benefit in that case, right?
I think it was number 1 on cryptocurrency subreddit, I think, for one day.
Yeah,
yeah.
Somebody did post about it. But even then, a lot of the angle from outside of the Bitcoin Cash community, yeah. But a lot of the angle is usually about Roger Ver. Like he's the big guy that is known, that all the BTC maxis love to pile onto, and that people in other crypto communities have heard of, and all that. It was kind of more about that than about about him supposedly defaulting or maybe being broke or whatever, which I think that's not really the case at all. I'm sure he still has stacks of money, and this 47 million he could just pay back. Well, that was another reason why he would potentially get part of the blame, because people would be like, look, can't you just pay back the money and just square it up with them, and then deal things? Like, why do you need to drag everyone into this when we kind of believe that you could just afford it? So I don't know. Okay, so I guess everybody's had a chance to vote on the poll. So here you go. Here's the poll in the Twitch chat live right now. Who bears the majority of the responsibility for this mess? Jet has given 3 options, which are Roger Ver, CoinFlex, and both equally. So we're looking for the majority of the responsibility. And I don't know if I refresh this.
Mine says 4 for CoinFlex, 0 for the rest.
Yeah. So apparently the viewers have voted overwhelmingly against CoinFlex. Nobody's blaming Roger, and nobody thinks it's an even split.
Two Dick Pete has,
but yeah, it's a small sample size.
Very small sample size. Yeah.
But Two Dick Pete says, without this much info, can we really make a judgment on this? That's another good point. There was no abstain option, or I don't know, so that could be another area. So of the people willing to pick a side, all of them voted against CoinFlex. That's certainly interesting.
At least for me, I think CoinFlex is at fault, but I would say both the reputations were screwed. Like, that's how I kind of see it all.
Certainly collateral damage onto both of them. So basically, then we had the 30th of June did also come and go. So CoinFlex put out a blog post with the update. Of course, this was when they'd said, like you heard on that Bloomberg announcement, probably the 30th, we've got high confidence that we're going to get this over the line. We're going to reopen, et cetera, et cetera. So they put out this update on the 30th, quote, "Dear CoinFlex community, we continue to talk with investors interested in RVUSD, and commitments are growing. Once the token sale is fully committed, we will be able to communicate a clear path towards enabling withdrawals. But until then, they will remain suspended. You will hear from us as updates become available. The goal is to do everything possible to avoid haircuts to customer funds, and we remain confident in our ability to bring this to resolution. Rest assured, we are working around the clock. Thank you for your patience and support. Mark Lamb, CEO," end quote. So again, I think firstly, it was just disappointing that despite saying, okay, we've got so many people that are keen to contribute, and there's been a lot of talk about, oh, wow, we've got people with billions of dollars that are potentially interested in buying this debt or whatever. Obviously, they didn't get a deal done, even though it was highly probable, apparently, a few days ago, but it didn't happen. And then I think, again, just this thing about the goal is to do everything possible to avoid haircuts. It just seems to me like Mark Lamb and maybe the CoinFlex team are just sort of irrationally terrified of haircuts when, like I explained before, I think people would rather have 66% of their money back now and maybe the rest later, rather than none of it now and maybe none of it later. That seems to me like it should be more of a selling point. And because Roger made these tweets about, okay, I'm not in default or I don't want to pay back to the counterparty, that also sort of on the surface seemed to tank any interest in the RVUSD token, right? Because who's going to buy the token of the debt when the person who's in the debt is like, I'm not going to pay it, like screw you guys, right? If Roger was sort of more amenable or negotiating or willing to, then it would be more convincing to somebody to come in kind of and buy that. But Mark's comments afterwards has been that actually after that tweet, they got more interest. I don't know how the hell that is possible, but maybe it was like a Streisand effect thing where it made more noise about it. Or it's also possibly the case that the investors could be willing to buy out the tokens regardless of what Roger does or if he wants to pay it back or not, because they might just think, similar to the equity deal that we were talking about before, they might just say, look, CoinFlex actually has a solid business and we can see up to this point. So if we just basically bail them out, we can see that over the next year or two or whatever, they'll make enough like trading fees and everything, and it'll be fine. It'll work out for us anyway. But it certainly seems like that. I'm not fully sure though how that conflict could then add to the interest in the token. That doesn't really make sense, and they haven't they haven't reopened withdrawals anyway. So
I always wonder if it's like what terms are and stuff. Like, is this good debt, bad debt? It seems like it's bad debt because Roger's like, I'm not going to pay it. So I wonder like how these calls went with investors. Like, I'm sure there's, pretty savvy investors and they were able to ask the right questions. And then Mark has to basically give information that basically is going to tell them whether this is a good deal or not and how much risk there is buying this debt. And so far, the longer it takes, the more likely it's really bad debt. Because if this was good debt, it was an easy deal, and it was like, oh yeah, I'll buy this debt because I know the person's going to pay back, and it's low risk and high reward or whatever. But these investors are ignoring, and even after Mark Lamb went on Bloomberg, and I think he went on CNBC as well to get kind of attention from investors and big institutions. And if he is supposedly on all these calls and nothing's actually being committed or, fully committed to where the deal goes through, it looks worse and worse as the time goes on.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a pretty essential point, is that, yeah, initially I was quite optimistic. And then after the Bloomberg thing, I was quite pessimistic. And then as time goes on, it sort of becomes more and more things get dragged out, more lawyers get involved. It turns into more and more of just a toxic mess that nobody wants to touch. And the chance of anybody getting back any of their money or any, thing like that just becomes increasingly kind of remote. So it's hard to say really. Okay, we've got an update on this poll. The poll has ended with CoinFlex have got 8 votes as bearing the majority of the responsibility. Roger 0 and both equally 0. So CoinFlex is certainly just getting absolutely destroyed in this scenario by the viewers of this show anyway. So that's kind of where we're at now. That was the last we heard from Mark Lamb, basically, as to what's going on. And of course, as time moves on and the smartBCH ecosystem have still been like locked up and stuff, Kui Wang, who's the main developer for smartBCH, he was trying to sort of negotiate with Mark or try and get the coins out of there or whatever, and Mark's saying, look, I can't give you back the coins because otherwise I'm legally at risk. So instead, he has started his own bailout plan on the next slide here, where he posted yesterday on read.cash the bailout plan for smartBCH's centralized bridge run by CoinFlex. So again, we're looking for about 101,382.3 BCH, and his plan is to basically put together a new team or of people that are outside of CoinFlex, not related to them, and presumably in some sort of like he talks about it like a contract, but it seems like it's more likely going to be essentially a multi-sig. So I don't know how many people you would have involved in that. I sort of, off the top of my head, sort of think, okay, maybe you would have like a 10 of 15 multi-sig or something like that. I know in Electron Cash, it goes up to 20 of 20 is the max you can have, but you would obviously want to have some redundancies. So yeah, maybe it would be like 15 of 20 or 13 of 20 or 10 of 15 or whatever type of multi-sig, which would be the new bridge. And to then, in this so-called BODAO, bailout distributed autonomous organization, you would essentially, it's like doing a community flip starter. Everybody would buy into this new BODAO and try and get the 101,000 BCH. And if it did, then you can basically cut CoinFlex out of the loop, and you can restart the smartBCH ecosystem has been running this whole time. And you also have, obviously, then you would have the main chain funds again. So you could back the smartBCH with the BODAO coins and just reopen that, and the economy and the ecosystem can just keep going while the CoinFlex stuff gets resolved and hashed out. The idea being that eventually, once CoinFlex does sort everything out and they give back the money, then you pay out the people who paid into the BODAO. So like if you have, so right now you could be in the position where you could put one BCH into the BODAO, and then either time goes on and CoinFlex gives back the original funds, in which case you get your one BCH back, or CoinFlex like does a haircut or whatever, maybe you get back half a BCH, or CoinFlex just goes completely bust and just scams all the fun, in which case you get back nothing. So, and as far as I can see, the only incentive to do this, to be a part of this, is essentially community goodwill, and essentially it's just basically a community bailout. It's just like, look, if we chip in enough cash as a community, you know, we can just get past this drama and just keep moving forward for everybody's sake as soon as possible. I mean, obviously, Mark Lamb has posted and said, look, he's in favor of this because, you know, his hands are tied, according to him, with the legal situation with the current coin. So if the community can just figure out a better way and just crack on with things, that would be better. I mean, it does seem like that, you know, that would be an amazing thing if it did actually happen. I don't know whether or not 100,000 BCH being just donated is really realistic.
What's kind of interesting is it's essentially the same exact plan that CoinFlex is doing, where CoinFlex is trying to continue their business operations to sell the bad debt to an investor as fast as possible so they can run their business. This is the same thing, except instead of Roger, it's CoinFlex. So SmartBCH is essentially trying to raise funds, say, we'll pay you back once CoinFlex pays us back. Just like how CoinFlex is saying, well, we'll pay you back once Roger pays us back. So it's the same idea of is raising funds, selling the bad debt, essentially, to continue SmartBCH, the bridge, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it's a bit of a different dynamic, though. I mean, the fact is the 100,000 BCH is about like $10 million, right? At $100 a BCH. So it's a lot smaller. And then obviously you also have it's being done by the community. So it's, you know, it's whether that's better or worse than having one rich guy buy up 47 million. Is it more likely that you could have the Bitcoin Cash community collectively come up with 10 million? Well, you know, it just feels like because the Bitcoin Cash price is low at the moment as well, too. On one hand, that makes the target value lower for the 100,000 Bitcoin Cash, but it also means that on average, people have less free money to just throw around into something like this. So
unless they were in stable coins this whole bear market and they're sitting on a big pile ready to go to bail
or
us
if
out.
they were in fucking Terra, if they were in UST, then they're just finished, right? So I don't know. What do you think about it? Would you contribute to this Bodow bailout, do you think?
I mean, this is like saying would I buy RVUSD, right? It's all dependent on the same thing, right? RVUSD will make CoinFlex work again. CoinFlex working again would make SmartBCH working again. So everything relies on this whole debt issue with Roger or RV or whoever if that's whoever the high net worth individual actually truly is. So if I'm not going to buy RVUSD, I wouldn't want to buy the Bodow or whatever.
Jet,
right? Because I'm at the same risk level.
Jet, would you chip into Bodow for the community?
No.
Okay.
And I think it's a mistake to be like for the community, because it's not. Like, the community didn't fuck this up. It's a situation that should be between two people, and their mismanagement has made it bleed out. I'm not a part of this. Like, you guys fight it out. I'll stay on main chain. Like, no, this is not for me at all. I don't want any part of anything to do with CoinFlex after this, and I will wait for a decentralized bridge at this point.
Yeah, I think that's kind of wise. I mean, I do feel like there's a part of me that could sort of think, okay, maybe I'll chip in like a little bit, just because I think it would be such an amazing story and such an amazing vindication of the community if it was like we came into this big unexpected problem, and then this is the way crypto works, problems are exposed by the harsh reality of the world, and then better solutions arise over the kind of ashes of the previous problem, So if we did have this problem and everybody said, Bitcoin Cash fucks up again, and then we just sort of started our way out of it, then it would be like, wow, that would be a real, special thing by the community. So, and I do also think it would be good for the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem as a whole, the sooner we can get SmartBCH back up and running and keep going. Where I'm hesitant is the fact that my money is I'm basically just voluntarily taking the risk from somebody else who already took their own risk with their coins in SmartBCH, right? So I can't really see a good reason that it should transfer from them to me. I don't know.
I just had a thought right now. Really, the only thing we're trying to fix is the peg, right? The one BCH on the main chain versus one BCH on SmartBCH.
Yes.
They're supposed to be equal value, right? Well, I can exchange one for one, but everything else is working. Like,
yes,
everyone's able
to
get, they're using a different mechanism to bridge, right? Through MISSwap and BlockNG. The only thing that's changed really is the peg, right? The peg has been lost. And really everything's working though. Like, I mean, SmartBCH is still a side chain that's mining blocks, and all the smart contracts are still working and operating fine. It's really just the peg that's off. And the question is could we just continue and just, who cares if the peg is a little off, if it's one to 2 or whatever the ratio might end up being? I mean, it'd be interesting, like, just to see how it plays out the way it is without a peg. I don't know.
Well, that's
maybe I'm being really dumb, but I just thought came to my mind.
Well, that's an interesting, point. Really, is that, then that is essentially what I've been. That is essentially transferring the haircut onto the SmartBCH users, kind of semi against their will, but also maybe it's better than nothing. And like you say, somehow in the midst of all this chaos, the BlockNG and MISSwap teams who've been killing it on SmartBCH just came out with, okay, don't worry. Well, not don't worry, but we've built another bridge. Here we go. And I'm still not really entirely clear how the hell they've done it, but they have made this other bridge, which apparently they had in the works beforehand, and then they sped it up because we ended up in this situation. But there's sort of a way that you can, use tethers, like aren't we just adding, we're just fixing one problem and creating another.
You know what? Tether's been working though. I mean, this whole time for the most part. I mean, can you really badmouth it if it's been the one that's been the longest stable coin in existence? Not to say it can't blow up one day.
That's exactly what happened with CoinFlex, right? Is they've been fine up until it's fine until it isn't. But basically, there's a way that people are now able to trade in by transferring tethers from Binance Smart Chain onto SmartBCH tethers. So basically, since you can do that, you can then buy Bitcoin Cash on the BCH side, or you can get the tethers and go onto Binance Smart Chain, and then from there you can swap that back to BCH on the main chain. So by this kind of roundabout way, you can get your money in or out. So then that's made a market for the risk of those smart BCHs, which went down to, it was trading at the most at about a 60% discount at the most moment of most fear. And now I think it's like a 10% discount or something like that. So we're seeing in real time because people can arbitrage that if they think that SmartBCH is going to be fine or the CoinFlex coins are going to be unlocked, then they can buy into it and get cheap BCH, which will be appreciating value later. Or if they're on SmartBCH and they're like, look, I'd rather have 85% of a Bitcoin Cash than one potentially nothing smart Bitcoin Cash, they can get out. So that's kind of a bit of an indicator there that maybe at the moment there's about 15% discount in the market. Maybe there's about 85% confidence that smart Bitcoin Cash is going to get its coins back from CoinFlex, and or this BODAO is somehow going to get funded and therefore repeg everyone back to
I think it's very important to get the peg back. But what's nice is at least in the meantime, everything's working. It's just that, your peg is broken for a while. But in terms of like, if you want to deploy smart contracts on SmartBCH, you have no problem. If you want to like even use Tether, right? You don't need to pair with BCH, pair with the, I think it's like Binance Tether backed or something. Yeah. Pair with that. I mean, you can just use that instead of BCH or SmartBCH, I should say.
Well, it's funny about you saying that it was working because it wasn't, it did have some downtime today. It seems like it was unrelated. At first, it seemed like it was an attack. I've got on the next slide here is there was these kind of validators, Mark Lamb and short CoinFlex validators and stuff was popping up, and it seemed like somebody was trying to attack the sort of the validators with these fake validators. But and the chain did go offline for about an hour, and then it came on, and then it came off for an hour, and then it came back. So I think it's all fine at the moment. But basically, these validators were going offline, and Kui Wang then said later that it turned out he initially thought it was an attack, but it turned out it was somebody in the community who just didn't, screwed up their settings, and they didn't know how to properly set up the validators, even though they were trying to actually support the network. So it seemed like it was all good in the end, but it just kind of really showed that the whole point of having proof of work backing the main chain is quite critical. Anybody who, it's just the regular FUD or concern trolling or whatever that BCH gets, where somebody comes in, are we going to switch to proof of stake? No, we're not going to do that because under crisis conditions, proof of work is actually very resilient, and proof of stake is great, for what it's great for until things go a little bit wrong. And then very quickly it sort of starts to break and have problems. And this was just an example of that, I think. So that was kind of, that was kind of that aspect to it. But you're right. For the most part, the Bitcoin Cash chain has just been working and flawless and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Right. So where are we at now? I mean, obviously the community is still really angry. We've got Mark has still been posting in the Telegram a bit. I mean, that's another positive aspect of this. It seems to me like Mark hasn't just completely rugged and just gone silent and flown off to Belize or whatever. He's still in contact with everyone. And at least for on my part, I do honestly believe that he's trying to work for a solution. He seems a bit irrationally terrified of a haircut, but I do think he is trying to get everyone's money back and trying to cut a deal with some investors, and whether it's equity or RV USD or whatever, and get to the bottom of it. Obviously, we do need to hear more of Roger's side of the story tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that. That might shed some additional light on it. But it is also true that all of Mark's sort of previous things, okay, you know, it's just a backlog with the withdrawals. Oh, wait, we've shut down the whole exchange. We'll give you an announcement we'll get the withdrawals going by the 30th. Okay, that hasn't happened. Doug Polk obviously didn't really get, you know, much insider info, so they just kind of rugged him, and then he's now quit as the ambassador. So, I mean, there's still definitely some negative marks against Mark on that front as well too. So that's kind of where we're at now. I don't know. What's your concluding thoughts on this whole saga? How do you feel we're placed moving forward? Are you optimistic that we're gonna sort it out, or do you think
I'm not optimistic? I'm not optimistic on CoinFlex being able to sell the bad debt. So I don't know what that means. If what their other options are after that, if they're not able to sell this bad debt. In terms of Roger just paying the debt, maybe out of his own, you know, goodwill or whatever to recover his reputation, that could happen. That might be more likely than trying to sell the bad debt to some random big investor. In terms of SmartBCH, I would say I'm a bit more optimistic on that, just because it's still working. Like, everything's working. The peg is lost, which is bad. Hopefully, maybe there's some sort of creative solution, whether it's the BODAO or something else, that is able to restore that peg. I feel like, you know, one of the things that made BCH special wasn't so much the smart contracts. That was just kind of like an extra benefit. It's still the main chain's still working, and, you know, and people are able to still, you know, use the main chain and transact as, you know, currency. So that's great. That's the big part of what Bitcoin Cash is still working and has no problems. This is kind of like a niche, which still impacts the community a lot. So hopefully there's some decent resolution. I'm hopeful, but still pretty pessimistic on the whole thing.
Yeah,
I don't know about these conspiracies though, like the speculation. We're just gonna speculate. All we can do is speculate on what the deal was, or by the end of the day, it's like, what's gonna actually happen? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it bears repeating that throughout this whole thing, the main chain has had zero problems, right? That there has not been, when other coins have drama, it's usually because it's broken. It's usually because the chain is down, the fees are so high that no one can transfer everywhere. They're having backlogs. So the most common problem you see in crypto is a hack, and following a hack, you have a technical issue, a technical bug, basically, or an attack of some kind, and then after that, you have a governance crisis. So those are the three biggest, and for this drama that we're having is none of those. The tech all still works. Nobody got hacked in a sort of technical attack. Okay, maybe there's been some financial shenanigans, but technically there was no like breach or money lost in that regard. And the community's governance is still fine. Like nobody's, shout out to Zone Crypto, hey mate. You know, so it all seems fine in that regard. So that's kind of a silver lining, I think, to me, that people can take some heart in, is that everything's still working perfectly fine. And I'm an optimistic person, so I just somehow feel like I do have the best of hopes that one way or another, the CoinFlex can find some buyers, or Roger can front up the cash, or the community can produce up this BODAO somehow. Maybe Jihan just says, look, I've got 100K BCH lying around. I'm just going to back this whole thing, and I'll sort it out behind the scenes, you know, just so we can move forward. I don't know. I just feel optimistic.
I would say one likely scenario might be that CoinFlex eventually, if they're not able to sell the bad debt and they have no other ideas, they'll do the haircut, like you said, whether it's like 30% or 40%, and SmartBCH will be fine because that probably, the problem is it's probably the user balances on CoinFlex are going to be messed up. So if you had BCH on CoinFlex's exchange, it's going to get haircut. But once they do that, they'll be able to just run deposits and withdrawals like normal, and the peg will be back because all the BCH is still there, the 100,000. That's kind of like a scenario that I think might be quite likely to play out, is just something like that, where if you had Bitcoin Cash on the exchange, you're screwed, but if you had your Bitcoin Cash on SmartBCH, you'll be fine.
And we've had a question from Bitcoin Jason. How does this affect NFTs? And JDiz has said, NFTs can move to a different chain easily. None of the communities want to do that currently. They want to stay, but if their hand is forced, I reckon they will. And that's another element where sort of the clock is ticking, that at least Smart Bitcoin Cash is still working at the moment. It's not like it's completely offline, but the longer this kind of drags out, or the longer there's problems with the bridge and stuff, the more likely people go off to some other chain and we lose those parts of our ecosystem and the valuable network effect and everything, which we really, really don't want to happen. So time is somewhat of the essence in that regard as well.
I have
as well too, I would say.
I have like a thought that might be really stupid, but I just hear me out, or maybe bounce this idea off you guys. So we've lost the peg and that's the issue. But what if that's the fair market value of SmartBCH until we have a decentralized bridge?
That's what I was thinking. I mean, that's kind of what I was saying earlier with the, it's interesting to see what the market value is now without the peg. And it still operates. Like, everyone could just use not BCH on SmartBCH. You could just start using, well, I guess Tether seems to be the most likely one right now on SmartBCH that's stable as your currency, or as you're exchanging NFTs for money rather than using BCH. But yeah, it's interesting. This,
opportunity
that's
for
kind of
arbitrage either way.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Hayden Otto made a really good video. So if anybody wants to get involved in arbitraging or bridging back and forward, go have a look at Hayden Otto's channel. And he made
right now, I guess
a breakdown of it all.
The value of it, right, is it what, 10% off? So
yeah, I think it's about 10 to 15% off, which shows that there's actually quite a good amount of confidence, right? It's not a 50% discount, or if people thought it was lunar and it was all over, maybe it would be a 90% discount or something. But it seems like there's still actually a good appetite in the market, or a good amount of faith that things are all gonna work out. So I guess that's like a bit of a prediction market that we've got going on there, and it shows that there is.
I'm not going to touch it.
I'm not going to be touching it either. But,
I mean, I'll still touch SmartBCH, the chain, but I'm not going to arbitrage with main BCH.
Yeah, me neither. All right, so that's kind of the CoinFlex situation. Hopefully everyone's up to date now. In the meantime, and as promised last week, following up on sideshift.ai and their swaps among all different coins, especially in light of this SmartBCH and CoinFlex drama. So I've got a quote here from their research this week, which was from the 21st to the 27th of June. Their report, quote, "This week brought an incredible frenzy of BTC deposits, just shy of 7 million, which smashed our record for a single coin's weekly deposit volume. BTC alone accounted for 70% of deposit volume, and second place wasn't even close, XMR with 543,000. This high concentration of BTC deposits was almost entirely shifted to BCH, with the BTC to BCH pair representing 5.84 million of weekly volume. This figure also was record-breaking and was the highest weekly volume that's been achieved by a single pair. BTC to BCH has now been the most popular pair for 9 straight weeks, and this week alone represented 58.72% of volume, a figure that is more than 12 times higher than the second most popular pair, BTC to ETH, with $463,825. This directionally was very much one way, with discrepancies in BTC and BCH deposit to settle volume being very noticeable. The respective differences for deposits versus settlements were 6.98 million versus 917,000 for BTC and $179,000 versus 6.14 million for BCH, end quote. So BCH is still just crushing it on SideShift. I guess with the ratio being as low as it is, I guess it just doesn't make sense to sell out your BCH to BTC. And it's also just such a good deal for BTC people to get in. I mean, the ratio is at all-time lows, but it's going to find a bottom soon enough if this keeps up at this rate, with us being crushing the records week after week on SideShift, with everybody just getting out of BTC and into BCH. What do you make of this? Do you think we are maybe getting to a point where the crypto markets have moved on from BTC enough that a few people are thinking, oh, maybe I should make sure I've got some BCH in case of a flippening?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that it hasn't really impacted the market. So I don't know how big sideshift.ai is, like, in terms of just volume or who's using it. But it is, it's definitely good news. I mean, that the BCH is being used a lot as a way to trade, to exchange. And the directionality is actually a bit good too. Like, if people were trading, they're just going one way, right? It's kind of like people that discover Bitcoin and they find Bitcoin Cash, they don't go back. So
exactly.
In a way, maybe that's the same thing that's happening, perhaps.
That's right. And it's just a small little flow through that little gap, and then eventually it's like a crack of water in the dam. It's just starting to,
or it's like maybe it's just some whale that's just slowly selling 1 million BTC over a very long period of time. That's just one person.
Yeah,
one whale. I don't know, because why are they using SideShift? Why don't they use an exchange? I don't know.
Well, because you don't have to sign up, and you can do it anonymously, and you don't. Yeah, I don't know.
So one big giant BTC whale might be wanting to anonymously switch over to BCH. Maybe, I don't know. Be interesting.
Josh Ellithorpe in the chat says SideShift is used by the Mist Bridge. Yeah, it's used by the Bitcoin.com wallet, by the Mist Bridge, and it's also actually the Mist Bridge. That makes a lot of sense. That would then definitely boost our traffic significantly. But it's interesting that there's still people coming in from BTC. But I guess that's another thing. If the BCH community does a lot of integrations with this kind of service, and that drags a lot of traffic in, then the people running that will be like, wow, BCH community is kicking off. And that will also flood around into the rest of the eco. I mean, that shows that it's still low fees. It's in demand. It shows that it's easy to link up with services, and there's good demand to move in and out of the ecosystem. So yeah, just lots of
it could be a lot of Bitcoin users that are just kind of discovering SmartBCH, and they're like, wait, this is like Bitcoin, but it's got its own, even Ethereum side chain. This is really cool. And then they try it out, and now they're like, oh, I'll put a little bit more in. And then they just keep going. Who knows? It'd be interesting why people are doing this.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess we'll just keep an eye on this, and we'll see if it keeps going.
Hopefully, numbers,
it's good news. You love to see it, basically. All right, next one also we've got is the StMaarten hearings. So this week we've had the Rolando Bryson in StMaarten has been involved in these kind of parliamentary debates that they were having about cryptocurrencies, which has been spurred, it seems, in large part by the fact that the Bitcoin Cash adoption is rising on the island. And so it's really got in everyone's attention, basically. And it wasn't even him that kind of suggested this parliamentary meeting. It was actually one of the other ministers who sort of set it up or proposed it, basically, and then wanted to get some answers from the finance ministry, who was not Rolando Bryson. He's in a separate section, as far as I understand. And so what has happened is they made this to investigate and dig into what's happening. So the kind of, from my impression of this video, it's basically the Minister for Finance and MP Bryson were both very basically pro crypto, and then they had these two other sort of parliamentarians who were kind of a bit anti-crypto, and the ones who are anti-crypto were kind of coming up with the same FUD as happens every single time about it's anonymous. What are we going to do about taxation? If the volatility is bad, then people can lose money. Oh, look, they lost money last week, blah, 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 blah. And there was also a really interesting criticisms from them that marketing has been done in a gimmicky way, they said. And they said, look, it's not like the government's done a coordinated rollout or anything like that. They were just seeing that Bitcoin Cash was just popping up everywhere and that merchants were getting onboarded and people were being shown how to use it and everything. And it's basically that they were upset that this kind of grassroots movement was going on and it not being a government program. So they were kind of trying to say, look, people need to know, be educated on this, and we need to have, people could just be getting told any disinformation or whatever without really digging into the fact that no, maybe people actually were getting the accurate information, and that's why it was growing really fast, and that this whole thing had happened just as a grassroots organization because they sort of understood enough to know that they couldn't exactly blame. Like, it's not Bitcoin Cash is not advertising itself. That's not how it works. It doesn't have any marketing department, so they couldn't really point the fingers there. But then they also couldn't really point out to any individuals and say these ones are to blame, because it's kind of happening in obviously we know that, okay, maybe Sonny has been a big part of it, maybe Mark Falzon, different people, but there's certainly a peer-to-peer element where somebody gets taught about it, somebody else gets taught about it, and then they talk amongst each other, and it is just happening peer-to-peer, right? So Orlando Bryson then did a fantastic job when he gave some comments. So he basically started quoting the Barbados Prime Minister, who was also saying good things about crypto, which was hitting back on the other criticisms that the neighboring islands, were doing things in a more government way and not seeing this kind of grassroots adoption first. And then he was saying, yeah, but the other countries in the region do also recognize that this is valuable. He pointed out El Salvador, and he said, look, they're doing a terrible job because they're doing it with custodians and not educating people properly. But then the Central African Republic, maybe they are doing some of education and everything. And a lot of it is about crypto generally, but it's also about Bitcoin Cash specifically. And it was constantly brought up, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Cash, because that's what they're seeing on their island. And that's becoming the conversation over there. So I don't know, did you see this talk, or did you have any impression of any of this?
Yeah, I watched part of it. It's very exciting to see what's going on in the Caribbean. I feel like that's something that we haven't seen before with adoption, especially with any cryptocurrency for that matter, that a whole island, even if it's a small island, that there is just more and more people using it, and it's almost becoming a circular economy, hopefully, where you don't have people selling immediately. Oh wait, I don't have to sell. I could just go to this. I could spend this down the street. I don't need to sell it for a different currency, like we see elsewhere. And it's because everyone's there is using it, or maybe not everybody, but enough to where you don't always have to sell it. And so it's interesting. I guess I'm curious what the numbers are, like the growth, right? Is it, because I don't live there, we only kind of see it through, maybe people covering it like Mark Falzone or whoever else is, being a journalist out there. So I'd be curious to see like how many people are actually, like, is it 1 in 2, 1 in 5 that are actually using Bitcoin Cash regularly? And then in terms of the contrast, what we saw with El Salvador and the top-down government model of trying to, create adoption that way, and how it seems like, from my perspective, from what I've read, is just that it didn't work out. Like, there's very few merchants actually accepting it. It was difficult. It was, centralized, but most importantly, people just stopped using it. in El Salvador, but in St. Maarten, it seems like it's prospering, and as well as other places in the Caribbean. I think St. Kitts as well. And then Bryson, I mean, is this the first politician, right, to have accepted cryptocurrency as their salary, and particularly Bitcoin Cash, I think. So that's kind of very newsworthy. And we don't really hear about any of this.
It's
other
not,
than if you're in the.
So it's not that he's the first to accept it for at least part of his salary, but like through his entire salary. I think that's the first.
Okay.
Because I believe someone from a New York governor or something like that accepted part of their salary for BTC. Or sorry, they used to accept part of their salary for BTC. Okay. They do not anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, the BTC salary acceptors have basically been getting wrecked because El Salvador, they were obviously bought in all this BTC and then they got wrecked. There was a couple of NFL players and whatever that accepted, massive signing bonuses and stuff in BTC, basically at the top of the bubble when these kind of things happen. And it's a bit self-fulfilling prophecy that all the nitwits jump in the boat at the last second, and that provides the final bit of euphoria before everyone realizes, wait, this has gone a bit far, and it crashes off. So they've now wrecked themselves, and I'm sure they're not, asking for another paycheck in Bitcoin and dollar cost averaging and whatever. They're probably just like, oh shit, hope this goes back up. Maybe just going to quietly not mention that. And if it goes back up, well, maybe I'm a genius in 5 years, but just, definitely get my next signing bonus in USD or something. There sort of seems to have been a bit of that, but the point about getting the salary in Bitcoin Cash for MP Bryson is that if there is adoption and local measures, he can literally just go out and spend it. Then that's the whole point. It is money. And then he's contributing back into the economy. He's obviously practicing what he preaches. He's giving more reasons to the local economy to get excited and get adopted about it. And he's taking action. That was really the key point, is that he was saying, look, we've got the banking industry and we've had all these problems with them, and we have a lot of unbanked people, and the banks are not helping us. So we've got to help ourselves, and this is a tool for it. And so, yeah, it's just fantastic to see. He's been doing absolutely amazing advocacy. And yeah, I hope it just keeps going like wildfire. And if it does, then we'll certainly see more of it in neighboring islands. And I think for everybody who, always asks about, well, what is the government going to do about crypto, blah, 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 this is a classic example. The adoption is just happening and the government kind of has to respond. But while they're having their, meetings and faffing about for the next year, the adoption will just keep going. Like, the government just responds to the fact that they're kind of losing control. And by the time they're responding, they're kind of too slow to catch up. The train's already leaving the station. And that's kind of the same thing that we've seen everywhere. Every time the regulation gets somewhat settled, well, crypto comes up with a new thing like algorithmic stable coins or whatever it is, new mixing techniques or a new way to stay ahead of things. Right, so that's that one. And final news item of today is CashTokens. So Jason Dreisner, one of the amazing BCH devs, has been putting out some info on CashTokens, which is basically this proposal that by changing and updating the scripting capability of Bitcoin Cash a little bit, you can essentially get all the power of, or a lot of the power of an Ethereum smart contracting platform with decentralized exchanges and all the other different tokens and different things that you can do on the UTXO Bitcoin Cash chain. So basically the idea is that then you can have both fungible and non-fungible tokens, and you can do all the things that finance does besides just sending and receiving money. At the moment, you can send and receive, and you can do some multi-sig and one or two other things. But when you add this, then you can do stocks, you can do bonds that pay interest, you can do equities, you can do shareholder votes, You can do all of that kind of stuff. Definitely is part of it, and a lot of it in decentralized way. So he showed a proof of concept of a joint execution decentralized exchange, a JEDEX, non-custodial censorship-resistant token DEX architecture for Bitcoin Cash. So this was just his first example of what this proposal would allow. So the difference from SLP tokens that we have now is that SLP tokens are invisible to contracts, so you can't have them interacting with each other, or a lot of the more advanced stuff you can't do. You can also have people accidentally spend them out of their wallets, and all those kind of things can happen with SLP tokens. But these cash tokens would actually be integrated into the protocol, so it's a bigger change to get them in, but they're more powerful. So the work for this has been going on for a while, and it was maybe going to go into the 2022 upgrade, but everything wasn't ready. There was still discussions being hashed out with the spec and so on. So it's being pushed back to the 2023 one, and these things are now kind of starting to take form. So like I was saying when we covered the hard fork upgrade, it's kind of the case that the community has to work way ahead of schedule. So by the time those upgrades were already getting into the 2022 one and they were already locked in, well, work had already started on the next one. So you can see we're still 9 months out from or even longer from the next May upgrade, but these things are already kind of starting to boil and come together, and then they'll get locked in about November if they're ready. And then people will have time to actually code it up and implement it, and then it'll go in the chain next year. But then the upgrades for the year after that, for 2024, will already be in the pipeline at that time. So yeah, I don't know, do you follow any of this, or are you excited about cash tokens?
Yeah, I've followed a little bit about how adding tokens onto the mainnet, and then I think they keep changing kind of like their approach to the protocol, how they're going to implement it and everything. It's exciting to see like what, the UTXO model can do in terms of like smart contracts and tokens. So it's definitely worth exploring. But I wonder how it's going to compare to like SmartBCH or just any Ethereum virtual machine. Because with an Ethereum-based model, you have the infrastructure already there. MetaMask, all the developer tools are already there. That's why it's so easy for someone just to make another Ethereum virtual machine, and then everyone can users can easily adopt it, right? Because they've already used MetaMask, they're already familiar with the all the Ethereum related tools. With this, I wonder how it's going to catch on if it does get released, and how it'll compare in terms of like popularity and just developers actually using it. So that'd be my skeptical concern of it, but it's definitely cool technology wise to, add more upgrades to the mainnet protocol to allow people to do this.
I mean, the lack of interoperability with all the existing infrastructure and tools and stuff is a big downside. And that's part of the reason why it's so exciting that we have smart Bitcoin Cash as well. So BCH just crushing it in this regard, can have access to everything. So that's amazing, and maybe they can even be built to interoperate with each other as well too, which makes it even more insane. No other chain could be even close to that. But I think the benefit, the downside being you don't have access to all that inbuilt tooling and stuff like that. But the upside is basically that you could have way more scalability and lower fees, because the UTXO stuff does not have to can be processed in parallel. So things that, although they'll have to be done slightly differently, it's possible that you can crank out way more demand for transactions and get way more revenue and transactions flowing around on the main chain, which then obviously has loads of good impact. It helps out with privacy. It increases miner revenue, which helps us to attract hash power. Obviously, it gets attention from the rest of the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And if we have this kind of combo of the interoperability with all the EVM stuff that's already built, plus our own unique little honeypot going as well too, unique benefits, then that could be a killer combo. And it's just great to see that even in the midst of all this CoinFlex drama, the devs kind of have their head down and they're just cranking out the next greatest thing, right? So BCH stops for no drama, it seems, which is really great to see. All right, so second last slide. As always, this week I decided, look, let's just skip over community comment and meme of the week. I don't know if that's people's favorite segments or whatever, but I wanted to make sure we had extra time to do every step of the CoinFlex drama, which we have. So I thought we'd just skip straight to the message to the community. What do people need to hear?
Well, I think, well, at least what I'm most excited for is, or kind of hopeful for, is to see these speculative bubbles to kind of like change in a way where we see more utility. Because right now it seems like every speculative bubble, whether it was the ICO boom, the one we just went through, or even the previous ones where it's just people wanting to get rich, like that's all it was, and it was all about branding, right? Each cycle seemed to be about what was hyped up, whether it was a technology hyped up or a token, and people were getting rich, and then it all just resets. I would love to see people using crypto daily, whether it doesn't have to be everybody on the planet, but a few million people in a particular country or worldwide just using it daily, whatever it ends up being useful for. I think Bitcoin Cash is in a very good particular spot. I mean, we see that sort of happening in the Caribbean and elsewhere as uses payments. So I would love to just see that kind of go on a exponential growth, like an S-curve adoption. I want to see the explosion of adoption of whether it's Bitcoin Cash or another cryptocurrency overall. So I would say that's like the most important thing. It's just adoption right now, because we already have the tool. I mean, the products out there are pretty reasonable, right? You know, it's at least for currency wise, Bitcoin Cash is ready as a product to be used as a daily currency. It's almost like you need to have the huge amount of adoption at this point and huge network effect. So I would love to just see that happen in the next, few years.
Yeah, we've certainly seen enough. It's sort of now
we'll see it continue, I guess, because we already we're seeing some of the small signs of it, I guess, in the Caribbean and elsewhere.
Yeah, I think we're also just at a point where the whole world is pretty much now aware of crypto, and the whole world has pretty much also been through a cycle, at least by proxy of pump and dump. Right, it's not like the first time everyone hears about it, but they don't know what's going on, and then they have to go through all this pump and dump bullshit, and then they have to get to what's actually going on here. And I think we are starting to run out of people who are completely unaware that there's something going on, or that still just think it's 100% scams. I mean, maybe a lot of people think there's a lot of scams, and they're right, there is a lot of scams, but it's getting harder and harder to deny that there's something real going on here. I talked to somebody at my work the other day who said, look, I don't really know much about this at all, but it seems like it's not going away, and I've got to read up on it. And I think we're just having more and more people are going to start slowly trickling into that category, basically. So yeah, that would be pretty huge. All right, that will do it for the show then, I think. So thanks everyone for watching. As always, you can donate on the slide. Thank you very much to the donators. I really appreciate it. Check out bitcoincashpodcast.com to get FAQs, start guides if you're new to the community and you want to know what all this is about, or if you need to help somebody out with getting that introduction to what's going on from a sort of conceptual point of view, or you have any of those questions that you think might not have been answered on the show. There's a lot of them now that there on the FAQs now, like at least 20 or 30 of the top most common ones people will ask. So you can check that out. Thank you very much to Ricky, my patron. Thank you also to the Twitch subs that we now had. We've had a bunch of them today as well. That's been absolutely awesome. And we're going to give shout outs for the week. My shout out goes to our BTC, who this week hit over 1 million subscribers, which is absolutely nuts, because our Bitcoin has whatever it is, 4.5 million. So on those metrics, our BTC, the most maligned and hated and censored and all this sub, is still kicking, been been 5-6 years in there, and it's still going strong. And eventually, it's like one of the top 300 subs on Reddit or something like that, and it's going to just keep climbing up those ranking and just continuing to be unignorable. It's not perfect, but it's doing a great job. So yeah, my shout out to the mods there and all the subscribers there and everybody who contributes that and makes that great. Do you have any shout outs, and where can people find you?
I don't have any particular shout outs, nothing that's coming to my mind. In terms of finding me, I do have a Twitter. I sometimes use just you can find me on LinkedIn. And then of course Telegram. I'm always on there. I'm the guy with the SpongeBob avatar. So you'll see me roaming around talking crap.
I'll put some links to that in the description as well. Jet, any shout outs?
I guess for me, it's just the Twitch subscribers. I think we've had more viewers this stream than any other or more consecutive viewers this stream than any other stream. So things are going good, and I certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, it's amazing to see like so many names and so many people I recognize coming into to watch this show live and to chat as well. It's really great. It just really shows the community is building up, and I'm thrilled to have this much interest and support in the show. Actually, it's been great, and thank you all for listening. Until next time.
The greatest story the world has ever known. The rise and rise of Bitcoin. 2022.
A single chance for the world, a single moment in time. Bankers captures all, our cryptocurrency flies. Gets to decide, Phoenix fly from the flame. Bitcoin BCH, forever changing the game.